and we continue with the broadcast this morning. Now, the situation in Gaza still remains dire. We've heard about the resumption of the attack and the war on Gaza. The needs on the ground are growing on a daily basis, and relief. Organizations right across the entire world actively advocating for parties to get involved and to give priority to rapid, to safe, to continuous and unhindered humanitarian aid that needs to reach the people who need it most. Now, we were fortunate during the Mets Gilbert tour to South Africa to have Shameemah Kolia with us. She is the executive director of Humanitarian Aid, Consultation, and Solutions, and she provided us with an insight into this relief effort. And she is in Cairo right now, and we're going across to be joined by Shameemah Kolia. Shameemah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Juma Mubarak and welcome.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it was lovely having you over here in South Africa during the Mets Gilbert tour, and you provided an insight on the relief work and the relief effort and the processes. But at this point in time, we've seen now the resumption of the attacks on Gaza, and we know many organizations like yourself, are in Cairo right now doing a lot of work, and in terms of even getting involved actively with regards to addressing the dire needs of the people on the ground in Gaza. And we know that this is growing at mammoth proportions, and this humanitarian aid needs to reach these people with a sense of urgency.
Absolutely, brother. It's early in the morning in Egypt, and the weather is no different actually in Gaza. And I can tell you it's actually very cold, and temperatures drop significantly at night. So, on top of a dire situation, we're facing winter, and obviously that brings a lot of harsher conditions with people with no shelter, diseases spreading. So, the needs, as you said, are great. And the humanitarian effort, across the world, we have to commend organizations and countries for wanting to be able to do that. The ceasefire has provided us an opportunity to be able to get in a lot more aid, but we have to put it into perspective. Over 50% of people living in Gaza are actually reliant on international aid long before this particular crisis. There's a blockade, sea blockade, land blockade, and the people have been reliant on that. And to just give you an idea, we're talking about somewhere between 100 to 400 trucks of aid just to sustain life ordinarily. With the crisis, we looked at maybe sometimes 20 trucks going through. The maximum that went through prior to the ceasefire was about 129 trucks. So when you put that compounded by the fact that it is being bombarded, there's no medical system, there's no food going in, we can really understand what the people are facing. With the ceasefire, we're seeing a lot more trucks go in, but really, again, nowhere near enough. The needs obviously are, food, medical equipment, but winter clothing is one of the big ones that we're working on now. Tents, blankets, temporary shelter, and we're starting to see that go through. We also know that the North was completely isolated, and one of our biggest concerns as organizations is how we got aid into the North. But in the last few days, we're getting to see that some of that aid is actually going through, which is a little bit of reprieve for the people.
Yes, Shavima, you mentioned obviously the conditions at this point in time have been difficult, and the last 7 days, like you mentioned, not enough has gone in. But with this resumption of the attacks, is this likely to impact or affect the aid still got, that needs to go through?
Absolutely. So, at the end of the day, whatever aid goes through does actually go through a vetting process and is only allowed in by permission of the Israelis. And we don't know what that's going to look like. So, prior to the ceasefire, as I said, numbers were quite low, and we don't know what that's going to look like going forward. We're pushing very strongly from every way that we can to be able to, ensure that there is those passages and we can get aid in, but we're uncertain at this moment what that will look like exactly.
Shamima, just looking at it, from where you are in Cairo, how is this relief? aid being coordinated through, with organizations like yourself. And I'm sure that there are
Mhm.
many other organizations who are present in Cairo right now.
Absolutely. So, we're managing about 47 charities from across the world, a lot of them actually South African, and we're so grateful for that support. But yes, it is a huge logistical, I think that's the part that, we don't see. We see the aid, but the logistics involved in there is actually quite complex. So we ourselves managing three warehouses and we're packing food parcels 24/7. We have three shifts in every warehouse of ours. We're doing it in Cairo where we're packing everything here and loading our trucks. We're doing that because we actually bypass that congestion which is at the border and it's making it much easier. It is coordinated by the Egyptian Red Crescent, who has the permission to be able to enter Gaza. And on the other side, it's actually managed by the Palestinian Red Crescent and UNRWA, who take hold of the trucks. Any medical equipment goes to the Ministry of Health in Gaza. It's a system that's working. So, the Ministry of Health is updating us constantly and updating other NGOs in terms of what the needs are because they do change. Today, if your truck of a particular antibiotic went through, an aesthetic went through, they don't need that tomorrow. So we try and make sure that we're updating our trucks according to those lists. The food, I think it's important to actually mention it is you'll see them being packed behind you in boxes. Each box weighs about 8.5 kilos. In reality, I would love to be able to send everything in a box. But they're designed in a way that gives people nutrition, but is also easy to carry. So if we think of the impact right now, mostly men were affected, and you've got women, children, and you've got injured people who need to actually take that box and be able to go home in a really quick manner because we don't want to expose them actually to anything that can happen. So, the boxes are also designed that way. We have lots of questions of can I send this in? And so I think it's important to mention that. So it is all coordinated. It's a huge task. Trucks are actually going in. And I think it's important to kind of mention that verification process because I'm sure on the ground there in South Africa, you're also hearing so many stories and we figuring out is aid actually going through, isn't it going through? How do you verify these things? Because these are all important questions. So, it's a system where the trucks actually have to go in and they click in Al Arish, and that's where the border is. You register your truck. It has to actually then go to a different border called Al Oja. It's controlled by the Israelis, where every truck is inspected. When the trucks are sealed on this end, they have a packing list, and as an organization, you get your truck number. That is then verified and checked on the other side, and you basically get either the green light or a red light of whether your truck can enter in. If it has gotten the green light, that will then get go through the Rafah crossing. It'll stand in the queue and go through. That process we had down to about 5 to 8 days of a turnaround once trucks were packed. It is a little bit slower at the moment because of how much of aid is actually going through. So we're seeing a lot more trucks of flour, fuel, water, and then obviously just the food and things like that. If you've seen in some of the boxes, we put in water into those boxes because that is obviously essential. And we don't want people then having to carry that 5 liter on top of a box. So if you've got a box, everything that you need is in there.
Yes, Shamima, but also time is of the essence. And from what you've just described in
Mhm.
terms of the process, Al Arish, and all of this going through, obviously this is all time consuming and the urgency. And again, we're talking about, and I mentioned giving priority to rapid, safe, continuous, unhindered relief. That needs to actually go through, and with all these checks and balances along the way, obviously time is running out.
I absolutely agree with you. And I think that that's why it's so important for us. And, we continue to ensure that trucks are always ready so that every day there are trucks going in irrespective. There's never a time that that border is not functioning. So, in terms of that, that is a system that is a very well oiled machine. So any opportunity that there is aid going through. The only time that will stop is obviously if there's no permission given by the Israelis. So, irrespective of what's happening, we always have about 10 trucks ready to go. And that's a daily, and that's just us managing the partners that we are. There's other people involved as well. So for as long as there are corridors and ways to get in, I think the international community has responded and are there and are trying their best to be able to meet those needs where they can. But again, we have to call for a permanent ceasefire and for us to be able to actually get into Gaza with, unhindered access to be able to help the people.
Shima, just finally, looking at supplies, are they readily available of all the essential items that are required, whether we're talking about food, medicine, or anything else? And, how easy or how difficult is it to actually source those supplies?
It's starting to get tough, brother. I have to admit that. So what we're doing is we're actually substituting, certain things in terms of the food hampers. Medical, so far we've been really fortunate, in country, and what's being imported is keeping us going, and we're meeting the needs. But in terms of the food items, they are running out. But when I say running out, there's always a substitution. So it might be a different brand. You might have to add something different into the food parcels. But these are the logistical nightmares that come with the crisis so big, but it's still being managed really well. And so far, alhamdulillah, that is continuing, because we're also looking to the future. Suppliers, organizations, we're all looking to how to counter that, so that inshallah we never come to that point of going, well, how do we manage this and where's the supply going to come from? So those are supply chains are very, very important in our work.
Well, shukran for that, Shamima. Always a pleasure talking with you and for providing us with that update live out of Cairo this morning. We wish you all the best and the organization as well. I know it's going to be a a very long journey, but it is, very, very rewarding, inshallah. And at the end of the day, Allah Ta'ala accept all the efforts. And hopefully, from time to time, we will be able to touch base and provide regular updates to our listeners and viewers right here on Salam Media. But for now, we wish you well and Jazakallah once again for your time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ameen. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shameemah Kolia, Executive Director of Humanitarian Aid Consultation and Solutions, live out of Cairo this morning.